Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. And today's guest, Faust Ruggiero, is an amazing therapist. He's been practicing for almost 40 years, and he's one of the top of the top. He has written and published 4 books in a 10-book series. And let me tell you guys, if you're thinking about therapy at all, you should really listen to this podcast because he teaches you in here some things to look for in a therapist. And you have to keep in mind, guys, not all of them are going to be great. And you want your first experience to be pretty great, right? So listen up all the way to the end. Hope you enjoy. So, Faust, you've been doing this now for, almost 4 decades. And the things that you've learned, there's so much that's caught up here in your head. And I applaud you for writing the 3 books. That is a gift to humanity. When you were writing these books, were you thinking of them as like a reference book for people?
Okay, I was thinking about what I do in counseling and what works there. We give people information. We want them to understand what their life is about, all the other things that are affecting their lives. And then we want to tell them exactly what they need to do in order to start changing things. So I wrote every chapter that way. A little bit of information, 5, 6, 7 pages, then go into the action steps. I did not want them to be long chapters. We see that in self-help books all the time. Lots and lots of information, and where do I go with it? I wanted shorter chapters so they can focus on condensed information. I wanted action steps so they could see what they needed to do and be able to make some changes, and then reference it should they need it down the road.
Okay, so what, you've been in practice for how long before you decided it's time for me to put this down in a book?
Oh gosh, it was I started practicing, started counseling people in 1979 and wrote the books in 2016, 17. I started writing the first book and published in 2019. So we're 3 books in. Actually, the 4th book was published yesterday. We just did the Fix Your Anger Handbook is published. Just Amazon got it yesterday.
Fix Your Anger, and you can get it on Amazon. And how many people need that in today's world? Thank you.
That's what we're doing these things for. What are all the various things we need to do? The various subjects. We're doing that. We're going to follow that with addiction, Fix Your Addiction Handbook. So, we're trying to grab all the most important topics that are affecting us today and, give people the information, give them the ways to get out of this.
Absolutely. It is so important. And what would be some of the reasons that someone may choose to read your book versus actually go to therapy?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. Some people will read it instead of going to therapy, those types of things. Most people will either be in therapy or then go to therapy once they start reading the books because it just is such a nice tool to augment a therapeutic environment. I'm going there and people will say, I'm reading your book, then I'm going to counseling. I brought this up with my counselor and he said, well, where did you get that? Because I'm seeing that in you. And then we can expand on it. Then what's happening is now the counselors are beginning to read the books because they're so applied. And that's what they're liking. They said, counseling is an applied situation. It's not, it's not one of those things that you just go and get information. You can get that online. You can read anything. How do I do this? So, it's, a lot of counselors like to work with workbooks and things like that. So they're doing that, which is nice to hear.
That is wonderful. Are you considering putting workbooks out with your books?
I thought about that. Whether we'll do that or not, there's so many topics to cover, and workbooks do take a long time to do and do right. So we may look at that down the road. But right now we want to stick to the text and get enough topics out there because there are about 10 different, the book is going to be, the series is going to be about 10 books long. So when we're done.
Okay, so you're 40% into this.
We're 40% published. We'll publish by the end of the year, October, November, we'll publish the 5th book. And then, I'll take a month and I'll start writing again.
Okay. So that leads me to a very good question. What is you taking a month? What is downtime for you?
I'm blessed in that somewhere along the line I understood the idea that downtime, that's fine. We'll do a couple things we haven't done. But for me, I like to get up every day and say I'm plugging myself into something I love to do. So I don't want to have to ever get to the point that I need a vacation. If something comes up and we say, gee, we like to do that, that's great. But I don't want to think that, I don't want to separate work and play. And it's all the same to me. I'm writing books, but I'm still seeing 25, 26 people a week. I'm still counseling. I love meeting people. I love sitting down and talking with them. So I look forward to my days every day. I can't wait for the next one to come along.
That is so cool. How do you, how do you, when you have someone who really comes in with something that is heart wrenching, how are you able to go to your next patient and, and be fully there?
Well, interesting thing about doing that is when the people come in, I'm 100% invested. They own me at that point. And when they leave, I know the next person's coming in. So you get to the point where it's a switch. So the empathy and all the things I need, the bonding, the knowledge to help them do work through some things, they're working at full throttle in the session. There's no doubt about that. Anyone that counsels with me, what you see in the way I'm talking now, that's how I am in counseling. I am there. We're gonna ask questions. We're gonna turn over rocks. We're gonna laugh and cry and do all those things we need to do. And then I'm gonna, if I'm fortunate enough, when they're in the office, give them a hug and say, "I'll see you next week. Call me if you need me." And then the next person is right there, and let's do it again. You have to like to do this, and I think you have to be cut out to do this. It's not a come on in and we'll just I'll emote with you kind of a thing, or how was your week. It's not that. We have work to do. There is work to do to get this done. I'm still like I can still see 10 people a day back to back, and it doesn't wear me out. I find those sessions invigorating. I find them something that I can really get in there with people, and so when they leave, you have to cut it off, and you have to say, all right, call me if you need me. I'll see you next week, and if they call, I'm there. I answer. So and then we turn it off because the next person needs to get exactly the same level of care.
So are you still learning through your everyday practice?
You should never stop learning. I have a chapter in the first book about wisdom and gathering, learning how to collect wisdom and be that person. But you can't do that unless you continue learning, and you're humble enough, I think, to say, even though here's all these years, with my 4 centuries of counseling, here's all this time that I spent, but I still learn. I still am willing to have you say something, and I say, gee, I never thought about that. Let's explore.
So all those questions to bring me to this, I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but I find it very important that the person I'm learning from is still learning. And so we see a lot of books that are written with someone who might have practiced 30 years ago. How do you feel? How do you feel about that in your industry?
I always get concerned about that. I get people, not only in the counseling profession, but all walks of life, where they say, well, I've been around a lot and I know now. Well, okay, that's great. You have the experience, but let's just take, the generational thing we're dealing with right now. Here I am. We raised 4 kids, my wife and I, and, we're in a different set now. We're in our 60s, and we say, I don't know what these young people are doing. I don't know how they think the way I used to. Information processing has accelerated everything, so I don't know all about that. There's a lot of things. The way the young people are processing today is different than we did. It just is. So you really have to sit back and ask questions and want to learn from them. But that reciprocity in a counseling session is golden. I mean, they come in and they say, well, they don't look at it as though I'm learning from them. They look as though I'm listening and I'm understanding. And that the learning part's a given. If I'm doing that, that's going to happen. I'm going to learn about them. But it's that part where tell me something. And I that's what I'm looking for. Tell me something I don't know. Tell, I would never want to be the counselor that said, I know everything. Come on in and I'll tell you this. We see that in docs all the time, and then they stop listening to the people. Uh, you can always know if your counselor or your doctor, whoever is learning and is still liking what they do, because they ask you questions and they don't cut things off. They don't tell you, oh, don't worry, do this. They don't go there. I would never do such a thing. We arrive at those conclusions together.
Well, that goes to, Stephen Covey's first law is seek first to understand and then to be understood. So you literally know whether you're a psychiatrist or a, a liver doctor, you need to find out what needs to be done. They're not all the same, and it's always going to be different. So that's oh my gosh, fascinating. How cool that you get to do what you love so much, and now you're getting to leave quite a legacy with a 10-book series for people to go back to. How do you feel about the fact that people who read your books that have never been to counseling now want to go to counseling?
Well, that's what we always wanted to do. We want to get people involved. And we've turned the corner after the pandemic. Everything so much went online, which is great. A lot more people are getting the help. The problem is the quality of help has gone down a bit, because now you've got a person counseling from their home. Maybe they were watching TV or ironing and then they just jump into the session, and the therapists themselves, well, gee, maybe I was, cleaning up the kitchen and I'm house, and they're not leaving their homes as much as they used to. So that part of it's a concern. You don't touch the people. You don't see body language. You don't get that intimate kind of thing in the online stuff. So, I kept the office going. I have a couple people I see online. They're in different states, what have you. But for the most part, 95% of my counseling is still in the office. People come in, they love that. They know you're still doing it there. And, that personal approach is invaluable. And that someone is listening to everything you're saying and loving the fact that you're coming into their office. I'm waiting for them at the door. I don't do that, get the secretary. I'm waiting for them. They know that, and I escort them out and hug them or shake their hands or do whatever it is. That is, people say that this is what it's supposed to be. We're not doing it as much as we used to.
Yeah. So how does someone find a great therapist?
I actually have those in my books. I have chapters on how you pick your therapists and what you do, and how you actually vet them. You make sure that they have everything you need. You don't just go to a counselor. I have depression. I'll go to a counselor. And then I get there and say, well, this guy wasn't that good with depression. There's all the questions you ask. I actually have, here's the questions you need to ask. And when you're connecting with someone in your first session, do these things. This is what you're going to expect. I have all that there because they need to know that. It's not easy to say, not only am I going to pour my soul out to a stranger, I don't even know who the stranger is. And we have all different kinds of people practicing and saying they can practice today. It's scary, so I tell them, this is how you do it. This is how you begin to search for someone. These are the people you include in your search. These are the questions you ask. These are the credentials you look for. All those kinds of things. When you get in your first session, you do all these things first. Then you decide if you want to go back. We need to earn that trust. Simple as that.
This is priceless. What we're talking about right here, it's literally priceless. I believe in the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, and if that is a true principle, that means 80% of every profession is really not that good at it.
You're right. And I've said that, people go into my profession for a lot of different reasons. Some of them just, it was there or they fell into it. Some of them go in because they started really fixing themselves. And then, and sometimes, unfortunately, that process is ongoing. We get into this because we want to be practitioners. We want to be people that help other people. I get that question all the time. What is your life all about? My life is about being in service of other people. That's what it's all about. that's what I've always been here for. People talk about, what you're born into, or what you're here for. That's it. I know that. And when I know that, then that's the thing I'm going to hone. I'm going to make sure I can be the best I can be at that particular way of doing things. So I'm still doing it. I'm still learning. I mean, I've never gotten to the point where, I think we have to be humble in our profession. That's the other unfortunate thing about being therapists and doctors. There is an arrogance that can really bleed its way into things. And we have to stay humble. We have to just, no one calls me doctor or whatever. No one calls me. They call me by my first name. We're going to get personal. We're going to get to the point where we have a relationship that says I'm going to help you. You're going to be able to trust me. You're safe here. We're going to get all these things open and done, and then teach you how to go on your way. And then I'll always be available as long as I'm doing this, so you can call me and say, "Hey, this came up, and I'm not sure what to do with it."
Sounds fabulous. It really does. And your books are very instructional. So, what percent of people do you think, just as a blanket, if you took 100 people out of the center of a city somewhere, what percent of them do you think should go to counseling?
It's a question people have asked for a long time. Everyone can benefit from a situation where they're able to relax, get some things out, talk about themselves, get that reciprocal kind of thing, whether it's a counselor or someone you respect and trust and has the ability to listen and ask questions and get you through things. As far as today, I'll bet at least half the people can benefit from a counseling session. Many are in need, but what we do is we have this threshold of comfort. As long as we can remain relatively comfort, we don't seek it out. We wait till the crisis. We wait till the blood is flowing, and then we say, can we stitch this up? And by the time we get there, we say, gee, you've lost 3 pints of blood, so to speak. Let's get you to the hospital. They all come late. Almost everyone that gets to me during a crisis period, and then says, well, then I've got all these things in my past. And I said, you never wanted to do anything about that? Well, I didn't think it ever bothered me, because it becomes what we deal with, what we normalize every day. So we don't realize, it's a problem. I teach people about healthy eating and how to feel healthy. And they say, well, I do feel good every day. And I say, good, let's do what I'm telling you then. And then you tell me how you feel in a month. And they come back and say, my God, I didn't know this is the way it's supposed to be, because the mind adjusts to what we provided with. So now they believe that they were living a healthy lifestyle until they can experience something else and then realize that they can integrate that into the way they live. And all of a sudden things get so much better.
That is so true. Of all of, as much as everything is growing and our knowledge of everything is growing, what are some of, if one or two or three of the things that we have learned about the brain in the last decade or so that we didn't know, that makes it even more encouraging to go get therapy and change the way your life is?
It's a good question. When we understand the internal processes, then we understand a little bit more about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we also understand how to help people. I talk a lot in my books about a process called habit formation. Normalization is what it is. An analogy, if you've ever watched nature shows, safari shows, those kind of things, the animals are walking right past the jeeps, the lions, the whole, and they're not budging because that jeep and the people on them are not seen as a threat, or they're not seen as food. They've normalized it in their brain. That happens with humans too. We normalize things, and then we never question them. Sometimes the brain, because the brain is trying to survive whatever we're giving it and keep us happy. So sometimes those things are good, sometimes they're not so good. And it normalizes it, and we don't question anything then. So, what we're normalizing, for example, now worldwide is is anger and going at people and tearing people down and jumping on one side or the other. We're looking at that as normal behavior. It is anything but normal behavior, the way we're living today. But we normalize it. We normalize the accelerated life process, and we embrace it, and we try to go faster, because it's been normalized. So I've tried it when I'm writing, when I'm counseling people. I say, let's take you off that normal thing for now, and we'll talk about what's normal for you. And you get there and start doing something. And then they all realize, what in the world was I doing there? I thought that was the normal way to live. Well, you didn't look at another way. And that attached itself to comfort zones. Once we normalize it, we get comfort. We get comfortable there. We run on autopilot. We don't question it. And there becomes the toxic behavior that gets them to me.
Okay, so the people in that person who's now coming to you in full crisis, the people in that person's life have enabled them to be that way to some degree, right? Usually.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, when you get a chance to talk to them and you say, why do you tolerate that behavior? Well, because it's always been that way. How do you talk to those people?
In those cases, we have to start tearing it apart. Okay, let's tear this whole thing apart. Let's use an abused spouse setting as an example. And typically, not always, but typically, it's the man being abusive. And I will, you can say to women, "Why are you staying there?" And the answer that they don't know is that the structures in the brain have begun to change. That's the other neurological thing we've started to see, is that why do women stay? Why do women go back? Because the brain now actually holds on to those ways of behaving, and the brain does not believe it's worthy of being in any other situation. It knows how to live in that one, and it goes back, and it's a marriage of two minds that are so toxic, but the brain is adjusting to it. It's visualizing as normal, and those women often cannot go into a good relationship. They will sabotage it because it becomes a fear zone. So what we do is we start breaking it all down. Let's look at all the little steps. Let's tear it apart and see all the things you're doing. Let's look at the way not even me, you think things should be. Is this what you want? If you're here, obviously you don't want that. So let's look and let's tear it apart. Let's start presenting it the way it should be for you. And then that's fine. They'll get that quickly. Now it's that neurological adjustment where I have to help them change that whole thing around, and not be the person that is just letting these things happen, and it's normal, and I know how to take it, and because they'll tell you how wonderful the guy is who's beating them up. Well, he has this problem. Yeah, he's got a big problem. He's hurting you. Once we start working now I'm working with the neurology. Now I'm working with, having them become accustomed and embracing health and healthy living, and believing that they firmly belong there.
Okay. Wow. I feel like I could talk to you literally for hours and hours and hours. What do you have any advice in general for someone who's just trying to get through the anger of the world, of everywhere that you go, you're getting, yelled at and people are rude, and how can they handle that better?
When you're dealing with anger, there are, and the book I just wrote has, I think, about 15 different kinds of anger. That's the first thing you want to do, is see what you're dealing with. Sometimes you might have 3 or 4, but you want to be able to define where it came from. You want to define undercurrents, meaning things in your life you never let go of, or traumas that you could never work your way through, because that's the undercurrent for anger. If those are always there, you're always primed and ready to go because that pain never left you. So you want to get those things in order. And then, you can talk to people, you can try to make some changes, but typically with anger, I always say, go talk to somebody. Be willing to say, you know what, this is the way I live. It's not just the way my angry outbursts. I live that way in my mind. Everything I'm doing, angry people just don't get angry. They think angry. That's the way. They feel angry. Anger is physical, intellectual, and emotional. That's the other thing we have to get past. It's not just an emotional reaction. It's not just an emotion. When I say to people, what is anger? 99% say it's an emotion. And I say, well, and the practitioners are saying that. Well, we're off base before we even start treating them. It's physical. That's what we feel at first. We may think you did this or that hurt me, but then it goes physical and we just, and then the emotions kick in. By that time, the brain can't think of what to do because it's so overwhelmed. So I'm teaching them how to deal with it on a physical level, learn how to calm the body down, get those undercurrents out of there, forgive where you got to forgive or be forgiven, whatever it is. And then let's get into the emotions and let's kind of, I do this thing called I over E, intellect over emotions. Let's get your emotions just to the side for a moment. You get to emote later, but let's get your brain engaged so these emotions aren't overriding your ability to think. Because contrary to what people think, emotions and rational thought all live in our brain. There is no other place in the body where the emotions go. That's physical. Emotions and intellect live in the brain. So the one that gets more energy is the one that's going to take over first. So I want to get them to the point where their brain takes over. Calm down, take a breath, walk away, do what you have to think. What do I want to do here? Then you can emote. And when I start teaching them those things, they'll come back and say 50% of the problem is gone. Now we can go back and get all those old things. Let's get all those undercurrents. Let's look at the situations in your life, the lousy boss, the mean spouse, the relationship that's going horrible, the financial problems, I'm the poster person for Murphy's Law. Let's get all that out of there, and then but everyone else does it backward. They start to get to those things first. So here I am trying to get all these environmental, these things in your life out before I taught you how to deal with the physical part of your anger and your emotions overriding your intellect. Most of the time, they'll be okay while they're in counseling. They'll leave and it'll all start again because we didn't do it right.
So immediately when it gets into your body, what do you do? How do you snap out of it?
No, I teach them techniques that we use all day long, not just in anger. If I get angry and I haven't learned how to do something properly the rest of my time, I'm probably not going to engage at that time. So what I'll do is let's talk about breathing exercises. Do them 50 times a day. You think that's a lot? You're breathing all day long, thousands of breaths. So I'm saying every 2-3 times an hour, slow it down, in and out, very slow. Because if you can do that, you train your body when the anger comes, you start to get into an angry situation, you say, let me just calm down here. Let me slow my breathing down. You might use prayer. You might use meditation. You might use yoga. You get those things in your life so your body begins to decelerate normally.
How important is exercise?
And exercise is the other part of the physical part of it because exercise, in addition to getting stress out, strengthens your body. So it can kind of ward off all these angry attacks, but it also raises the chemicals in the brain, the dopamine and the endorphins and all those things, the happy chemicals, if you will. I'm at my age, I'm still working out 6 days a week. I have all these things in my schedule, and that people will say, you don't get angry, I said, very, very rarely, because these things are all in there. So my initial reaction when something angry comes along is to go decompress. It's an automatic reaction. Go down. Don't get angry. If you get angry, now I'm gone. And what happens is I've not solved the problem. I've gotten angry. Now I maybe made someone else angry or threw something or broke something. I have more things to deal with. It doesn't work. But when I can decelerate quickly and I can say, body down, I'm not going to emote on this. I'm going to think about what I want to do here. Now I'm in control of myself.
Very cool. Well, Faust, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our people. Are there any books beside the 4 now that you have published? Are there any books or podcasts or anything that you would recommend for our listeners?
Podcasts, they're out all over the place. I do a radio show where I interview guests, who are experts in their field. All I tell you, you can go on to there's a if you really want to get good podcasts, there is a site called Listen Notes, and all the good, and then you can just type in top anger podcasts, and they'll give you the top 5% or whatever, rather than trying to find them. It's an interesting site. When people say they want to interview me, then I'll go to their interview and say, does this sound like it's a match? Yes. And then if I really want to, I might go to there and say, how are they doing? Or I can also, they also give examples. All the person's podcasts are there, so you can actually go and get all the examples of what they're doing. So that, it's about vetting the things. Just don't listen to anyone. Try to get to the experts. Do a little vetting on your own. Go online. If it's going to be a podcast, go to their webpage. Go to their podcast. Listen. Is this what I want? Is it going to do what I want for me? There's a lot of good stuff out there, but you just have to be able to be a little more efficient at finding and knowing what to do.
That's a great tip. I'm excited about it. I never knew that existed. So thank you. And I'm sure all my listeners are thanking you. And we'll put the links to the books below, guys. So please pick them up. Right now we have the Fix Yourself Handbook, the Fix Your Anxiety Handbook, the Fix Your Depression Handbook, and just out today is the Fix Your Anger Handbook. And you can buy those anywhere books are sold, Amazon, and we'll put the link below so that you can pick that up. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for asking.
You've got it.